I died on the street with my sick child while my wife was celebrating her first love's birthday. Chapter 1. The day of the accident. It was supposed to be an ordinary day, yet everything fell apart. I was holding my sick child in my arms, waiting on the side of the road for help. The cold air bit at my skin, and the sharp sting of my despair cut deeper than anything physical. I glanced down at my child's pale face, her labored breathing mixing with the screeching sounds of the cars speeding by. Every minute felt like an eternity as I held her close, willing the paramedics to come faster. But they didn't. My mind kept racing back to my wife, Olivia. She was out there, celebrating the birthday of her first love, while I was here, struggling to keep our daughter alive. The anger burned through me. Olivia, the woman I had given everything to, was off laughing and enjoying herself with the man who had come before me, leaving me and our sick child behind. I couldn't believe it. I thought about how she'd sent me a text earlier that day, saying how excited she was for this special evening with him. As I read it, my heart twisted, my body filled with an overwhelming sense of betrayal. There she was, in her element, basking in the glow of nostalgia, while I was dying on the side of the road. It wasn't just that she was with him, it was the fact that she didn't even seem to care. She didn't care that her child was fighting for breath. She didn't care that I was holding onto our daughter, waiting desperately for help that never came. She was too busy enjoying herself, laughing with him, as if none of this mattered. I could see it all now. The posts on social media, the photos of her glowing, laughing, holding hands with the same man who had once been the center of her world. And here I was, stranded, dying, ignored. How could she be so selfish, so cruel? And then the impact, the sickening crash that ripped through the air, the agonizing moment when everything went black. And when I opened my eyes again, I found myself not in that cold, chaotic world, but back in high school. What the hell was happening? I rubbed my eyes, trying to clear the fog, but nothing made sense. I wasn't supposed to be here, not like this. But there she was, Olivia. My first love, my obsession, my source of endless heartache. Sitting there in that back seat, with that innocent bright smile that made my heart flutter even now. She looked at me with wide eyes, a shy blush coloring her cheeks as she asked, "Do you want to be my boyfriend?" I could feel the blood rush to my head, but it wasn't the same kind of rush I used to feel. No. This time there was only disgust. The words slipped out before I could stop them. No, never say that again. Don't even think about it. I looked away, the anger burning in my chest. Olivia, who had been the center of my entire existence, was now nothing but a painful memory. The girl I had chased relentlessly, throwing myself at her feet for years, trying to prove I was worthy of her love. And for what? To be ignored, to be discarded like a used-up toy. The whole school knew how badly I'd fallen for her. I'd done everything. No, more than that. I'd gone to extreme lengths to win her favor, from bringing her milk every morning to doing her chores between classes. I even stood in front of everyone at the flag-raising ceremony, confessing my feelings for her, knowing the principal would probably punish me for it. But none of that mattered, did it? Because Olivia never once acknowledged my feelings. I had given her everything, and in return, I was nothing more than a joke. Sitting at my desk now, I couldn't help but reflect on how foolish I had been, how blind I had been. This girl, this woman I once thought I couldn't live without, had never cared about me. She never would, and yet I had thrown my time, my heart, my life at her. Olivia would never have been able to love me. I had been so damn stupid. The anger boiled in my veins as I sat there. I opened my backpack, trying to calm my mind, but when I saw the 2 glass bottles of milk, I felt a wave of nausea. They had been prepared by the maid at home. She must have forgotten that I only needed one. One bottle for me, not for her. Suddenly, the quiet whisper of Grace, Olivia's desk mate, broke my thoughts. "Ryan's trying to make up with you," she murmured, glancing at me. "I told you, he couldn't hold out for long." I bit back a sarcastic laugh. Make up with her? Olivia had no idea what that word even meant. I handed the milk to Martin, sitting beside me, and said, "Here, for you." He looked confused. For me? I nodded without a word and went back to reading my textbook. I couldn't be bothered to entertain her anymore. Olivia wasn't worth any more of my energy. Martin leaned over, his voice laced with curiosity. "Why the sudden change, man?" Without looking up, I answered coldly, I want to get into Class A next semester. I'd been placed in second high with the second highest score in the city, but to be in the same class as Olivia, I had deliberately left enough questions unanswered during the first exam to move to Class F. I had done that for her. I had sacrificed so much just to be close to her. But now there was no reason for me to stay in this class anymore. I had no reason to keep living in the past. Not anymore. As I sat there, thinking about it all, how Olivia would one day be my wife, only to betray me and cause the very accident that would take my life on that fateful night. I felt a bitter taste in my mouth. No, I wouldn't go down that road again. I couldn't. I stood up, shoving my chair back, and walked out of the classroom, my thoughts clouded with rage. Chapter 2. The Decision to Cut Ties. It had been a few days of peace. No more thoughts of Olivia. No more second-guessing my every move. The constant worry and emotional roller coaster that had consumed my life for so long, chasing someone who would never return my feelings, had finally come to an end. And with it, I felt something I hadn't in a long time: freedom. It was as if a weight had been lifted off my chest, and I could finally breathe. I had stopped caring about her, about the relationship that had never been, and instead began to focus on myself, my studies, my hobbies, my friendships. Things that had once been overshadowed by my obsession with her. I didn't want to fall into the same trap again, like I had in my past life. Olivia wasn't worth it, and I would not waste any more time on something that had brought me nothing but pain. That day, James and I went to the cafeteria. He ordered his usual, and I took my ribs, the same thing I always had. But as I sat there, the memories of Olivia and everything I had done for her started creeping in again. I couldn't help but remember how many hours I'd spent writing her love letters, how I had confessed my feelings to her in front of the entire school, even though I knew it was futile. It all felt so ridiculous now. I had done all that for her, and she had never cared, never once even considered returning my feelings. The waiter came over and asked, "Are you getting anything for Olivia today? We have her favorite squirrel fish." The question hit me like a punch to the gut. I stopped for a moment, thinking about all the things I used to do for her, all the ways I tried to win her over. I had brought her food every single day, always making sure she had what she liked. But now I couldn't care less. I had spent so much time and effort on her, and it had gotten me nowhere. I felt a cold bitterness rise in my chest. "No," I said flatly, my voice colder than I had intended. "I'm not buying anything for Olivia. Not today, not ever again." James gave me a questioning look, but I just shrugged it off. I wasn't going to explain myself to anyone, not even him. I had made my decision, and I wasn't going to look back. As we were about to leave, I saw her. Olivia was standing at the end of the line. When our eyes met, there was a moment of shock on her face, and then confusion. It made my stomach churn. I didn't want to deal with her. Not now. Not ever again. So, without a word, I turned and walked away. She didn't deserve another second of my time. James noticed my sudden change in behavior. "What's going on with you, man? Why did you just stop paying attention to her?" I glanced at him and sighed, leaning back in my chair. "Nothing. I just think everything with her was pointless. It's all a joke." And that was the truth. I had spent so much of my life focused on her, thinking she was the answer to everything, but she wasn't. And now that I had stepped away from all of that, I realized how much more time I had to focus on myself. For the first time in a long time, I was free. No more worrying about what Olivia thought of me. No more chasing after her approval. It felt like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. The days passed, and I began to enjoy the freedom I hadn't had in years. I played basketball with James, went to the gym, even started picking up my old study books that had gathered dust in my desk drawer. High school, once a place of dread and longing, had become something more manageable, almost pleasant even. Then, the school dance competition came, and I remembered. I remembered how, in my past life, I had emptied the flower shops just to make sure Olivia's dance team knew I was supporting them. I had arranged flowers on the ground to say, "Dancers with no boundaries, chase your dreams," even though I was bleeding from the thorns. But in the end, after her team won, Olivia didn't look at me. She didn't even acknowledge me. Her eyes were on her teammates, on the victory, but not on me. This time, though, I didn't feel the need to be there cheering her on. I told James I wasn't feeling well and stayed in class, catching up on some English homework. Looking back at what I had done for her in the past, I couldn't help but feel disgusted. All of those grand gestures? They meant nothing. She didn't care, and I had been foolish to think that she would. Later that day, James came back from the event, a surprised look on his face. Olivia wasn't herself during the dance. She kept looking at the audience, like she was searching for someone. I didn't need to hear anymore. She wasn't looking for me, I said, my voice firm, but my chest tightened. No way. I could see it now, the way Olivia was acting, like everything I had done for her had been erased from her mind. The years of attention, the hours of devotion, none of it mattered. It was too late. I wasn't going to be the fool anymore. I was done with Olivia, done with the past. Chapter 3, Challenges from the Past and Change. The days after I made my decision to move on from Olivia were oddly peaceful. It was like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. No more obsessing over someone who would never care for me the way I had hoped. It felt freeing. I wasn't shackled by the endless thoughts of her anymore. For the first time, I realized I had time to focus on things I had neglected, things that mattered more than the heartache I had been drowning in. I started to put effort into my studies. I even found myself getting better at things I had pushed aside, like basketball with my friends, and actually reviewing my old test papers. James had been telling me for ages that I needed to focus on myself, and now I finally understood what he meant. For the first time in years, I was not living for Olivia. I was living for me. It was a strange but welcome feeling, like I was rediscovering parts of myself I had forgotten. But no matter how much I told myself I was done with her, the past kept clawing its way back into my life. It wasn't like I could just erase her from my mind. Olivia had been my everything for so long. I tried, really tried, to block her out, to stop thinking about the years of chasing her, the constant rejection, the heartache. But memories kept flooding back, especially when moments like the school dance competition came around. It had been years since I'd seen her dance, but I could still remember everything. How I used to buy every flower in the local shops to support her. I even went so far as to arrange petals on the ground, spelling out words like, "Dancers with no boundaries, chase your dreams," all for her. Even though the thorns from the flowers had torn at my hands, I didn't care. It was worth it, I thought. Anything to see her smile. But of course, after all that, when her team won the competition, Olivia didn't even glance in my direction. All the attention went to her teammates, to the glory of the win, but not to me. The realization hit me hard. I had wasted so much of my time, my energy, and my love on someone who never appreciated it. The sting of that memory was sharp, but this time I was determined not to repeat the same mistakes. Instead of attending the event this year, I used the excuse that I wasn't feeling well and stayed in class, burying myself in English homework. I didn't want to watch her again. I didn't want to feel that old pain. She was no longer my priority. And when James returned after the competition, he told me how Olivia had seemed distracted, her eyes constantly searching the audience as though she was looking for someone. The thought made me sick. "Do you think she was looking for you?" James asked, his voice carrying a mix of curiosity and concern. "No," I replied coldly, barely looking up from my textbook. I could feel my pulse quicken. "She wasn't. She's moved on." I wasn't sure if I believed my own words, but I said them anyway. The old Olivia was gone, the girl I had been obsessed with. I was done. I wasn't going to play the fool anymore. But it wasn't that simple. I could see it now, her attempts to get back into my life. She started acting differently, more interested, like she wanted to make amends for everything that had happened between us. Olivia would approach me in the hallways, trying to start conversations, asking me about school and pretending to care about my day. She even reached out when I had trouble with a particular assignment. But I saw through it. It was all fake. It wasn't out of genuine care. It was out of guilt. A way for her to soothe her conscience. I wasn't about to be her emotional punching bag again. I wasn't going to be the ex she could call when she needed comfort, when things got tough. I had done that before, and it had broken me. It wasn't going to happen again. When she tried to apologize, telling me she regretted everything that happened, I couldn't even bring myself to listen. My heart wasn't in it anymore. I had learned the hard way. Olivia wasn't going to change. She never had, and she never would. All I had invested, all the sacrifices I'd made for her, it no longer mattered. It was over, and I had to accept that. "Olivia, stop," I said one day, cutting her off before she could finish another attempt at a heartfelt apology. "I'm done. This is just another game, and I'm not playing it anymore." Her face fell. I could see the hurt in her eyes, and for a second, a tiny part of me felt guilty. But then I remembered everything I'd gone through, the pain, the heartbreak, and I knew I couldn't go back to that. Not now. Not ever. I wasn't going to let her disrupt the new life I was building for myself. I was finally free. Chapter 4. Facing failure and the feeling of regret. I thought cutting ties with Olivia would bring me peace. I told myself it would be easy, like flipping a switch. But the truth is, it wasn't that simple. The weight of the past still clung to me, a constant shadow that seemed to follow me wherever I went. The loneliness started creeping in, a quiet and persistent feeling that I couldn't shake, no matter how hard I tried. I had made up my mind to move on, but watching Olivia with Lucas only intensified the struggle. Lucas, a new guy at school, had started to get close to her. It wasn't just his appearance or charm that caught her attention, but his ability to make her smile, to make her feel seen in ways I never had. The sight of them laughing together, their easy camaraderie, made me feel like a ghost in my own life. It wasn't just jealousy. It was the cold, hard truth. Olivia had moved on, and I was still stuck in the past, nursing a broken heart I couldn't seem to heal. I watched her, day after day, slipping further away from me, her attention now solely on Lucas. Every time I saw them together, my stomach twisted in anger, in frustration. It was like all the sacrifices I had made, all the efforts I had put into trying to make her notice me, were nothing. She was becoming someone else, someone who no longer cared about me. One afternoon, I was sitting in the cafeteria with James, trying to get through another monotonous day. And then, there she was, Olivia, standing at the end of the line, looking over at us. Our eyes met for a brief moment. She didn't look angry or annoyed. No, it was something else. Confusion, maybe? Surprise? Whatever it was, I didn't want to be there to see it. I turned away quickly, pretending like I hadn't even noticed her. James caught on right away. "What's up, man? Why the sudden cold shoulder to Olivia?" I didn't even have to think about it before I answered. "It's nothing," I muttered, my voice distant. I think it was all pointless." Saying those words out loud didn't make me feel better, though. It didn't erase the gnawing feeling in my chest. As much as I told myself I was done, there was still a part of me that wanted her to care. I was tired of wanting something that was never going to happen. Days passed, and I tried to focus on things that mattered. My schoolwork, basketball, the things I used to enjoy. But the reality was, Olivia was never far from my mind. The rumors started to circulate around school, whispers of her and Lucas becoming more than just friends. At first, I ignored it. It was just idle gossip, right? But then, I saw them together again, laughing, talking, their chemistry undeniable. And it hit me harder than I cared to admit. Olivia wasn't just moving on, she was building something with him. I wasn't the one she was turning to anymore, not in any way that mattered. My mind kept racing. How could I have been so blind for so long? All the things I had done for her, all the time I had wasted, were now meaningless. I tried to push the thoughts out of my mind. "Focus on school, Ryan," I told myself. "Focus on getting better, moving forward." But it wasn't that easy. Every time I saw her, every time I heard her name, the pain would resurface. The old wounds, the ones I thought were healed, would reopen. I found myself wondering over and over again if I could ever truly move on from her. The feelings I had for Olivia didn't just vanish because I wanted them to. There was a part of me that still cared, still hoped, even though I knew I shouldn't. And that realization, that regret for everything I had done for her, made me feel like I had failed. Not just in love, but in understanding myself, in giving so much of myself to someone who would never feel the same way. The days grew darker, more isolated. James was the only one who seemed to understand, the only one who stuck by me. He'd constantly remind me to let go, not to let these negative emotions consume me. But deep down, I felt like I was losing everything. My self-worth, my sense of purpose, and most painfully, my belief in love. I couldn't stop thinking about how everything had gone wrong, how I had spent so much time trying to make Olivia love me, but it had all been in vain. It wasn't just the rejection, it was the realization that the love I had given her had been wasted. I had given her my all, and she had taken it, never once giving me anything in return. Olivia had moved on, and I was stuck. Chapter 5. Confronting emotions and change. Watching Olivia grow closer to Lucas was harder than I ever imagined. I had told myself time and time again that I wasn't going to fall back into that painful, endless cycle with her. Yet every time I saw them together, my heart twisted in ways I couldn't control. I tried to appear indifferent, cold, but deep inside, I was breaking apart. I thought I had moved on. I told myself that I was done with her, that it was over. But seeing Olivia with Lucas, seeing her smile at him the way she never smiled at me, I couldn't help but feel that gut-wrenching sense of abandonment. She was slipping away from me, and I wasn't sure I could stop it. It was like my mind was telling me one thing: let go, move on. But my heart refused to listen. Every time I saw Olivia laughing, talking to Lucas, my heart would skip, then fall into the familiar ache. I couldn't shake the feeling that no matter how much I told myself to stop, no matter how hard I tried, my feelings for her just wouldn't die. I hated it. Then came that day. Another one of those damn school events, the sports meet. I had promised myself that I wouldn't let it affect me, that I wouldn't care. But then I saw them, Olivia and Lucas, standing together at the sidelines, chatting and laughing, like they had been doing this for years. It hit me like a slap to the face. The sight of them together, so comfortable, so familiar, was everything I didn't want to see. I felt like I was standing on the outside, completely invisible to her. But instead of confronting her or storming over to them, I just walked away. I turned on my heel, my heart pounding, my chest tightening. There was no point in trying to get involved. I had tried for so long, and now all I felt was the sting of rejection. I had to keep moving forward, even if it meant leaving Olivia behind. Yet, despite my efforts, Olivia wasn't done. She started approaching me more frequently, trying to engage me in conversation, and even apologizing for the things she'd done. She told me she regretted everything, that she realized her mistakes, and that she wanted to try again. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to hear her say those words, but I couldn't. I couldn't let myself fall back into the same trap. I've heard it all before, I muttered under my breath, not bothering to look her in the eyes. I don't need any more apologies from you, Olivia. You've already hurt me enough. I could feel the bitterness in my voice, the anger rising up like an old wound. Olivia seemed taken aback, her face falling with disappointment. But I didn't care anymore. I had spent years trying to please her, trying to make her see me, and it had never mattered. Still, even as I tried to pull away, I felt that empty space inside me, the nagging feeling that no matter how hard I tried to ignore it, there was still a part of me that longed for her. The love I had given her, the time I had invested, couldn't just be erased. The hurt was still there, gnawing at me. Could I really live without her? Could I forget everything we had, or thought we had? I continued to focus on my studies, on improving myself. But even as I threw myself into schoolwork, into basketball, I couldn't shake the emptiness that haunted me. I felt like I was moving forward, but the past was always lurking in the shadows. My mind told me to let go, but my heart was still tied to her, still aching with longing. I realized something. No matter how much I tried to move on, I couldn't simply erase her from my life. She had been such a huge part of it. And now, no matter how much I fought it, there was a hole inside me that I couldn't fill. I'm done, I whispered to myself one night, staring at the ceiling. But deep down, I knew that saying it didn't change anything. I was still stuck in the past, still haunted by her absence. The truth was, no matter how hard I tried to shut it out, Olivia still had a grip on me. And that was something I wasn't sure I could ever escape. Chapter 6. A New Start and a Firm Decision. After all the emotional chaos, I finally found some peace. Letting go of Olivia had been harder than I thought, but I realized that I couldn't let her control my life anymore. The past was the past, and I had to accept it. I had to move on. It wasn't easy, but the decision was the right one. One day, I ran into Olivia in the hallway. She looked at me like she was waiting for an answer to something, like she wanted to explain herself again. But I was done. I didn't want to go back to the person I was when I was chasing her. So I told her, I don't love you anymore. I can't keep holding on to what was. She looked shocked, and for a second, I saw a glimpse of regret on her face, but I didn't care. I wasn't the same guy anymore. I turned and walked away without looking back. I knew that was the last time I'd talk to her, and I was okay with that. But even with that decision, things weren't perfect. I still felt an emptiness inside me. I had let go of Olivia, but I hadn't quite found my way yet. I threw myself into my studies, into learning to take care of myself. The loneliness still lingered, but I was starting to feel a little stronger. Then, one day, James sent me a message. He told me how proud he was that I didn't go back to Olivia and reminded me that I was on the right path. His support meant more than I could explain. It was exactly what I needed to hear. I wasn't alone in this, and I realized that I had the strength to keep moving forward. I wasn't fully healed yet, but I was getting there. With time, I knew I would find my way, and eventually I would be okay. I was ready for whatever came next, because this time I was living for myself. Chapter 7. The feeling of freedom and a new path. After months of struggling with regret and failure over my past with Olivia, I finally found peace. I realized that holding on to the past only kept me stuck. The decision to move on wasn't easy, but it was necessary for me to grow stronger. I began focusing on myself, reconnecting with old hobbies, joining sports clubs, and improving my studies. James was always there, encouraging me, reminding me that I had more to offer than just Olivia. My life started to feel more purposeful, even if there were still moments of emptiness. Then I ran into Sophie, a former tutor, who had grown into a confident, successful woman. Our conversation made me realize I wasn't ready for a relationship based on unreciprocated love. Sophie taught me that to love someone else, I had to first love myself. As I accepted the lessons from my past, I began to embrace the idea that love could be peaceful, not painful. I wasn't bound by my past anymore. The future was mine to shape, and for the first time I felt ready to face it, free and open to whatever came next.